We are live, and I just realized I forgot to grab my mic. I think this mic picks it up anyway, so you can probably hear me. But sorry, y'all. It's been a few weeks since I've done a stream, and I was sitting here thinking, like, oh man, do I even know what I'm doing? Do I even remember how to do this? And clearly, I don't, because I forgot to bring my mic down. But anyway, what is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Erik, and this is Erik Bets Fights. This is like my return show. Yeah, it's been probably 3 weeks or something since I've done a show. Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of reasons. It doesn't matter. You guys didn't miss me anyway. But yeah, I took a little time off to finish up a work project, and then I was out of town for a while visiting family and whatever. But yeah, I mean, for those of you who watch my videos a lot in the past, you regularly hear me talk about like how I'm always struggling to find time to squeeze in recording my videos and stuff. And I'm just a very unorganized person, and I have a hard time juggling work and family and tape study and sitting down to get my videos done and stuff. But I've been trying to prioritize a little more and schedule things out a little more because, things kind of just fell apart there, and I didn't get any content out for like 3 weeks, and I missed it. And I'm glad to be back, and I'm hoping to be back on track here. I'm going to start scheduling guests for big money bets again and get all that going. So anyway, I'm excited. This is going to be my full card breakdown for UFC Vegas 60. It's headlined by Corey Sandhagen versus Song Yadong. Should be a lot of fun. As usual, before we jump into that, I want to recap a little bit. I forgot to get this ready to go. Just 1 second. I want to recap how things went last event, which would have been, should be popping up in a second here. Hey, there we go. I don't know if you can see that very well, but UFC 279. It was the card that got all shook up. It was supposed to be Chimaev versus Nate Diaz. Got shook up at the last minute. Nate Diaz versus Ferguson, etc. But anyway, it was a pretty good winning night for me. I ended up with 5.61 units at 35%. We'll run through these real quick. As you can see right there, I did have a 10-unit max bet on Khamzat. That is only I'm now 5-0 on, I'm just calling them big bets. Anytime I go 7 units or more, I'm undefeated on those so far. But yeah, once they had the shake up there and I saw Khamzat at minus 475, I was like, man, that is a big price. But I was like, I really, really don't think he's going to lose this fight. The idea of putting out 10 units to win a little over 2 did feel kind of weird, but I was like, he's going to close a bigger favorite than this, so I'm just going to go for it. He closed more like minus 600, minus 700 range. So, and the result was never really in question. So yeah, I put out a 10-unit bet. And we picked that one up, so that was nice. In addition to the 10 units, I did bet 0.69 nice units on Holland Chimaev to go under 1.5 at plus 145. So that one came through for a unit. I put a bunch of sprinkles on Nate Diaz here. I put half a unit on him to win inside the distance at plus 325. So we got that one. And then I also sprinkled Diaz to win in rounds 3, 4, and 5. And he came through in round 4. So we picked up 4.4 units on a 0.2 unit sprinkle there at plus 2,200. So that was awesome. That pretty much saved my night right there. I put together. Oh, I forgot to mention. I didn't even do tape for this card either. This was just one of those situations where I was basically just. I did watch a little bit of footage, but for the most part, I was just listening to and reading other breakdowns and making my decisions accordingly. Which that's actually what I did for years before I started content creation myself. I've been betting on fights. I've only been creating content and tracking my bets for less than a year now. It'll be coming up on a year in October. But I've been betting on MMA for way longer than that. And what I used to always do is just read breakdowns, listen to podcasts, take notes, decide what bets I wanted to make accordingly. And to be honest with you, I was more successful when I was doing that than I've been since I started doing my own research. But whatever, we're going to keep working on it and keep getting better at it, hopefully. But anyway, I did put together a parlay here. That literally, like I said, I didn't do tape. I just threw a bunch of chalky favorites together. And I don't recommend doing that. It doesn't work out a lot of the time. So yeah, both Dawodu and Collier lost there. So I bet on Dawodu here. This actually was initially a parlay similar to this one. This was like a 3 or 4 leg parlay that got picked apart when fights changed. So that turned into a 1.1 unit bet on Dawodu, who obviously lost. I put a 0.2 unit sprinkle on Weeks in round 3. That didn't hit. These two together. I bet Linus scorecards no action, so if he gets the finish, that comes through. And then I thought like, well, either Linus is going to get the finish or, if it goes to decision, I get that back. But if Linus doesn't get the finish, I figured if Weeks is going to get the finish, it's probably going to be in round 3. So I did that little sprinkle there. But I put a little bit on Dumont versus Daniel Wolf. Doesn't go the distance. And man, that one came close to hitting a number of times, but we didn't quite get that. And then Macy Chason by decision. That's almost like an auto bet for me at this point. They like to make Chason the underdog, and you get a decent number on her by decision. I did that. I bet Chason by decision against, was it Norma Dumont? I think so. She came through for me there, so I took another shot at it. Didn't work out. I'm going to show you this too, because this is kind of funny. I did 0 tape. So I do, before I scroll up and show you, and I've said this before for people who, tailed my bets and watched my stuff for a long time. If you ever see me bet on anything other than UFC, I didn't do tape. I only tape UFC. I mean, unless I have taped like Bellator and PFL before, but very, very rarely, because I don't have time. Like I always talk about, like, I don't know how the people that literally do the tape on every, every organization and put stuff out. I don't know how you do it. I barely keep up with doing the tape and getting the workout for UFC. So, but I do, I'm a DGen. I love MMA. I love betting on MMA. So when there's a Bellator card or a PFL card or a Contender Series card, I don't have time to do the research, but I still want to put bets out there. So I consume some content, I make some decisions, and I throw some bets out there just kind of based on information from other people and recommendations. Anyway, I got reverse swept. It finally happened, gang. DWCS week 8. I didn't do any money line plays. I literally just did a bunch of prop sprinkles. Lost every single one of them. Lewis by decision. Nope. Lewis in round 1. Nope. Peak in round 1. No. Basharat round 1. Basharat inside the distance. No, sir. Brazil by submission. Nope. Man by submission. Nope. Aliskerov by decision. No. So lost 2.73 units, 100%. So yeah, I mean, it's never fun to get reverse swept, but at least, I did put it on my record, so that's on me. It's out there, but at least I can revel in the fact that it wasn't actually my own research. I was just tailing some folks, and you'd think I'd learn a lesson. I say this all the time, but like almost every time I bet on Contender Series, I feel like I lose a lot. I do well on the UFC where I put the work in, and then I lose on these smaller organizations, and I'm always like, man, I got to quit making those bets, but it's just too fun, My unit size is small. I don't take, I see myself, kind of like Clint from Die Hard always says, like, I'm never going to be a professional gambler. I'm not trying to be the best gambler out there. I'm just trying to be entertaining and have fun. And in the end, I got to put some bets out there, even if I don't know what I'm doing. So anyway, let's go ahead and move into breaking down this, what is it? UFC Vegas 60 card. Let's see. There's the full card. First fight. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I'm sorry. Since it's been so long since I've done this, I was like not fully prepared. Usually I got to get my screen all set up here so I can see my notes. You guys know I have a terrible memory, and I literally cannot do these breakdown videos unless I have my notes in front of me, because I'll just blank out. I'll be like, I don't remember what I was going to say about this fight. So I gotta get my screen set up here. I clicked live like before I was ready. I should have actually gone through. And anyway, all right. So first fight of the night is going to be Nicholas Motta versus Cameron VanCamp. I hope I got these in the right order. I think I do. They changed the order on me, but I updated it. So hopefully I'm correct. Since I'm going to be using Tapology to share here, the odds that they show on Tapology are usually a little bit off. It shows Nicholas Motta at minus 240, Cameron VanCamp at plus 195. I think it's really more like Motta minus 200, VanCamp like plus 170-ish now or something like that. But as far as a breakdown on this fight, one thing that we noticed right away, Cameron VanCamp is a lot bigger. He's gonna have 5 inches of height and 4 inches of reach here. Motta's mostly a striker. VanCamp is mostly a grappler, or at least he was. Like if you watch his regional tape, he was a grappler. Like he was pretty dominant in the grappling in his regional tape, but against really low level competition, And to be honest, the first time I watched tape on Cameron VanCamp for his UFC debut against Andre Fialho, I was not impressed. He was one of those guys where I was like, sometimes I think he was a late notice replacement. I can't remember for sure, but a lot of times, especially when it's a late notice replacement, the UFC will bring in a fighter that, they're not going to bring in anybody who's a total scrub. You got to have a decent record. You got to be from a decent team, whatever. But sometimes they end up bringing somebody in that you watch the tape on them and you're like, okay, this guy's not ready, and he's going to lose this one. They're going to give him another one for taking the late notice shot. He's going to lose that one, and he's going to be out of the organization. And that's kind of what I thought about Cameron VanCamp when I watched tape on him for the Fialho fight. However, I thought he acquitted himself pretty well in the Fialho fight. He did get finished in the first round, but he hurt Fialho at one point. He looked pretty decent. He definitely has issues with his striking defense. He's definitely very, very hittable. And Nicholas Motta is a guy who, we saw Cameron VanCamp get caught by one big punch from Andre Fialho and just drop, and that was the end of him. Nicholas Motta is absolutely a guy who can replicate a performance like that. The guy's got a lot of power. He fought Jim Miller in his UFC debut. I ended up betting. It was a last minute thing. It was Saturday morning right before the fights. I ended up betting Jim Miller inside the distance, and that came through for me. So that was cool. But Motta's got a lot of power. He's a good striker. He's a guy, he can be a little bit low volume. Like, he likes to counter, and this is the sense I got watching his tape anyway. I don't know if his striking stats agree with this. I'd have to look, but he tends to really want to wait for the counter, and he tends to really, really pick his shots, which is good. But he can end up being pretty low volume if the shot that he wants isn't there, because he's just kind of waiting for it. He's not a guy who's trying to touch you up. He's a guy who's trying to land the big one, drop you, get you out of there. And VanCamp is a guy who can be susceptible to that. However, if I knew VanCamp was going to look to grapple here, I would be potentially be willing to pick him outright. I do think he's going to be the better wrestler and grappler, and that size advantage. I don't think he has the striking to use the size advantage in the stand-up realm, but the size advantage could come into play in the wrestling and grappling as well if he's just a bigger, stronger guy. I just said all that without looking at my notes. Let me see if there's anything in my notes that I wanted to say. I remembered more than I thought I was going to. Yeah, that was all right. I guess I did say. Oh, what? Oh, okay. Actually, looking at their stats, I did look at their striking stats a little bit. Motta's striking accuracy shows as 30%, which is super low, which is surprising to me because in my notes, I said, oh, he seems like a really efficient striker. He picks his shots, but 30% striking accuracy does not agree with that. With VanCamp at 61% striking accuracy. And then the reason I noted this is because it's funny, because if you flip-flop it, their striking defense, Motta's at 60%, Cameron VanCamp at 29%. So Motta's striking accuracy is 30%, defense 60%. Cameron VanCamp's striking accuracy is about 60%. His defense is about 30%. So they're opposite there, but that's interesting. Anyway, I do kind of lean Motta to get the win here, to probably be able to find that knockout, probably even early. But I did end up betting Cameron VanCamp here at plus 180, just based on those, and like I said, I don't know. He didn't look to grapple at all in the Fialho fight, if I remember correctly. I don't even think he shot a takedown. He might have shot one. I can't remember for sure. But if I really trusted that VanCamp was going to grapple here, I'd be all for it. I don't necessarily trust that, but I think he'll have enough of an advantage if he does look to go that route, that I was willing to take a shot on him at that plus 180 here. So as far as a pick, probably going with Motta, but I did put a bet on VanCamp just based on that size and that grappling advantage if he chooses to use it. Wow, I talked about that way longer than I was planning to. Next up, we've got Tony Gravely versus Javid Basharat. We saw Basharat's brother make his way into the UFC on the Contender Series last night. It's Wednesday right now. Okay, looking at these, I think these odds are a little bit behind as well, but it shows Basharat as a favorite at minus 180, come back on Gravely at plus 155. I think that might have tightened up a little bit. I did the tape on these guys, and, they're guys, I've done tape on them before, but I ended up feeling like I don't, sometimes I can feel like I have a read on a fighter a little bit, but I still have a hard time figuring out a read on the dynamic that fighter has against a particular opponent. And this was that kind of situation for me. I'm having a hard time envisioning how I think this fight is going to play out. So I don't have a real strong read here or a confident pick. So I'm seeing this as more of a little bit of a show me spot. I think I can learn more about both of these guys by seeing how they perform in this fight against this kind of fighter. So that's really more. And for that reason, I think it could be a good live betting spot, because I'm having trouble picturing what the dynamic between them is going to look like. But sometimes when the fight starts, that dynamic can become apparent pretty quickly. If Gravely is able to come out and just easily mow Basharat to the ground and hold him down or whatever, like that's gonna tell me something. Although Gravely can tire as well later in the fight. Although he looked like he's improved at in the Simon Oliveira fight. He went 3 rounds, grappling pretty hard, fighting his way out of chokes, and he was still fighting hard in round 3. But anyway, I digress. And Basharat, or if round 1 plays out with Basharat being able to defend the takedowns and piecing Gravely up on the feet, that's going to tell me something. So yeah, for me, it's just a little bit of I want to see how these guys perform against each other, and potentially get a live bet in if I see something that I like. As far as like a breakdown on these guys, obviously Basharat he's a really slick kickboxer. He throws a variety of different strikes from a variety of different angles. He's always switching his stances. He's a good moving target, and I think he mixes things up and he kind of confuses his opponents. He's just really slick and always moving, always switching his stances. You never really know, what strike he's going to throw or where it's going to come from. Gravely's a little bit more straightforward. He was a guy that he was known as more of a wrestler coming up, and he's still a wrestler. I mean, he averages, I think, 6.6 takedowns per 15 minutes in the UFC, which is fantastic. But he's also, he's fallen in love with his boxing a little bit. He's got good power. He's got good hands. He can find the button and knock somebody out. We've seen that. In his last fight, Johnny Munoz, if I remember correct. His last fight was Johnny Munoz Jr. He found I bet Munoz. I had a sprinkle on Munoz by sub in that fight, if I remember correctly, and Gravely took him out of there in round 1, if I'm remembering that right. But so yeah, I don't want to go as far as to say it's a striker versus grappler matchup, because that's oversimplifying. But I think it could largely come down to whether Gravely's able to get his takedowns going or not. See if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, I mentioned that Gravely has more than 6.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. And he shows less than 12% control time. It's impressive to see that many takedowns per 15 minutes. We look at a guy like Merab Dvalishvili. Man, I don't remember what his average is, but he's attempted as many as like 20 takedowns in a fight, and he's completed, I think, like 14 or something. I don't remember exactly, but a lot, which is really impressive to see. But when you see somebody who's averaging that many takedowns per 15 minutes, what does it mean? It means they're not holding their opponent down, right? It means their opponent is getting back to their feet. So Tony Gravely averages more than 6.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, only 12% of control time. So even if Gravely is able to get Basharat down repeatedly, if Basharat is able to get back up and make Gravely repeatedly work for those takedowns, that's exactly the kind of thing that's potentially going to tire Gravely out. So yeah. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that fight. I don't have a real strong read for you or a real strong pick or anything like that. I guess if I was going to make a pick, screw it, I'll pick Gravely. I don't know. I'm not confident either way. Some people, I usually don't even make picks. Like if I don't have a bet, I just kind of give you my thoughts and that's it. But I know some people really like to hear the picks on these kind of videos. So I will try to remember to do that. Sometimes I just talk about the fight and then I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't even pick somebody. Next up, we're looking at Maria Agapova versus Jillian Robertson. We see it's pretty much a coin flip. Robertson at minus 140. Agapova at plus 115. I think that's probably still pretty close to where the odds are at for that one. Excuse me. This one, I'm actually pretty comfortable calling this one a striker versus grappler matchup. I feel like every breakdown video I say, I don't want to oversimplify, but there's at least one fight where I do it. Usually there's 2 or 3 fights where I do it, but I'm going to do it here. This is a bit of a striker versus grappler matchup. Agapova is much bigger. She's 1 inch taller and has a 5-inch reach advantage. If the fight play, and Agapova, I wouldn't say either of these two are like a fantastic athlete, but I think Agapova is the much better athlete. Agapova, obviously she's got the long reach. She moves pretty well. She seems pretty strong. She seems pretty powerful. She's got fast hands. Robertson on the feet she's not gonna knock you out with her. Well, I mean, knock you out. She's not gonna knock you out with her striking, literally, but also, I mean, like, she's not gonna blow your socks off. She's not gonna knock your hair back with her striking prowess or her movement or athleticism on the feet. She's a little slow. She's a little flat-footed. I do think Agapova will definitely get the better of the striking if it stays there. That said, Agapova is a decent grappler, but we saw her last time out against Marina Moroz. Was that Agapova's last fight? I think it was. Anyway, I attended that. That was an event in Vegas. I attended that card live, and I had a bet on Agapova there. I did not expect that Marina Moroz was going to absolutely dominate her like that. Like Moroz was able to take her down and just dominate her on the ground. Robertson will be the much better grappler here. If she's able to get Agapova down and keep her there, I do think she's going to be very dominant. She's going to be able to get the positions she wants. But even though Robertson is a great grappler, she's not a fantastic wrestler. I do have some stats. Where is it? Okay, so even though Jillian Robertson isn't really like a fantastic takedown artist, she's had 12 UFC fights. She's gotten at least one takedown in 10 of them. So she's been able to take down her opponent at least once in 10 fights. The most takedowns she's ever gotten in a UFC fight is 3, and she's done that twice. So even though she's not a great wrestler, she does tend to be able to get her opponent to the ground at some point. So it's like, is she going to get Agapova to the ground at least once? Probably. Is once going to be enough? I don't know. So if I have to pick here, I'm going to go Jillian Robertson. I'm not super confident in that, but one thing that I do like here more than picking a side is I like this fight to finish. If Robertson can't get the takedowns and the fight is playing out in open space on the feet, I think Agapova is going to chew her up. If Robertson is able to get the takedowns, I think she will eventually find the sub here. I do like this fight to finish. Fight doesn't go the distance, can be had for like -175. I don't know if that's the greatest price out there. It's not a great price, but it's not bad. You're usually going to get a much better price than that on a women's flyweight fight. But the bookmakers are clearly pretty savvy to this matchup and how it could play out, and that there probably is a decent shot for a finish in this fight. So I guess I'm gonna pick Jillian Robertson by submission, but as far as a bet, I think I like the fight not to go to decision better than actually picking a side here. Next up, we've got Trey Ogden versus Daniel Zellhuber. Zellhuber -230. I think he's even a bigger favorite than that now, maybe. And Trey Ogden +195. When I was watching tape here and I heard them call Trey Ogden the Samurai Ghost, I was like, how have I never heard that? I mean, he's only fought in the UFC once, but I did not catch that nickname when doing tape for him against Levitt, nor when he fought Levitt. So anyway, I always like to be straightforward with you when there's somebody that I just don't really have a read on, and that's Trey Ogden for me. He's a guy that I need to see him fight at the UFC level a little more before I'm going to have a comfortable read on who he is. I think I did bet him against Jordan Levitt. I thought he was going to be the much better striker. And I didn't necessarily think he was going to be the better grappler, but I was like, okay, on the feet, he's going to have it for sure. If it goes to the ground, I think he's a good enough grappler to hold his own against Levitt. But then it turned out that he didn't have any answer for Levitt just throwing a million leg kicks, like on the feet. That's really all Levitt was doing. He just kept kicking him in the legs. I'm not positive. Let me know in the comments if you know. I think Jordan Levitt might have broken the all-time lightweight record for most leg kicks landed in a 3-round fight in that fight. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up for sure, but he landed, because I know one of the commentators mentioned it in the middle of the fight. He had already landed like 33 at the midpoint of round 2 or so, I think. So yeah, I don't know how many he landed total, but anyway, I'm not sure what to think of Trey Ogden. I think he's decent all around, but not great anywhere. But I need to watch it. I need to see him more to get a more comfortable read on who he is. Daniel Zellhuber, on the other hand, is someone who clearly has a very impressive skill set. He just turned 23. He's just going to be making his UFC debut here. So, there are some red flags there as far as the guy being really young, the guy stepping up in competition, going to be in front of in the bright lights for the first time. But if all of that was taken out of the equation, Daniel Zellhuber should be the much, much better fighter here. I mean, if you watch the kid, he's just very impressed. Trey Ogden's one of those guys you can watch tape and be like, I'm just not impressed. It doesn't mean he's not good, but I'm not impressed. Zellhuber's a guy he's going to impress you when you watch the tape, right? Fantastic kicks. He's got a quick, snappy question mark kick. He throws kicks in a variety of ways, spinning kicks from a variety of angles. Really, really good with kicks in general. Really good at keeping at range and using that weapon really well. Also, he moves really well. He can wrestle, he can grapple, he can kind of do it all. He's quick, he's athletic, he's young. He's a guy who, I'm not going to say he's a future star necessarily, but he's a guy who looks like he could have the goods to be pretty good, as he gets older here. Also, he's big for the weight class. He's 6'1" and he has a reach of 77 inches, which is huge. Sometimes you hear about someone's reach and you look at them and they don't look any different really, but every so often, this is something I always notice when it's the case. Every so often there's a fighter that has a monstrously big reach and you can even see it. Like when you see them in the cage, you're like, he has really long arms. Daniel Zellhuber is one of those dudes. If you haven't noticed it, next time he fights, pay attention to his forearms specifically. His forearms are incredibly long. Like you can see, like, wow, he's got long arms. One other guy that comes to mind who's that way is Francis Ngannou. If you've never noticed, watch him once. His forearms look like shins, like they're super long. So anyway, yeah, enough about that. Zellhuber's got a really long reach. He's well-rounded. He seems promising. He had that awesome judo throw in his Contender Series fight as well, which was super impressive. He's got really good ground and pound, really, really hard strikes on the ground. So yeah, there's a lot to like about him. But, he shows minus 230 here. Yeah, he's at like minus 305 now. That's, if I remember correctly. I should just get, here, let me see. Sorry, I appreciate you bearing with me here. I know I was going to keep best fight odds pulled up here. Because, it's like, I don't want to keep showing you the Tapology odds and just being like, I don't think those are accurate. Like, okay, well, why don't we look at the ones that are then? I know why, because then I have to sit here and find it, which is annoying. Okay, yeah, the best Zellhuber can be had for is minus 275. He's out there at like minus 305. Trey Ogden's best price out there is plus 255. I do like Zellhuber to win here. Zellhuber is the better fighter, the more impressive fighter. There's every reason to think that Zellhuber is going to be the better fighter and going to have the better career. But man, I wouldn't hate anybody for taking a shot at plus 255 on Trey Ogden just at this point, with Zellhuber being just turned 23, making this step up in competition. Ogden's one of those guys, I don't have a strong read on him. I don't necessarily think highly of him, but he can wrestle, he can grapple, he can be a dog in there. Like, is it possible that we see Zellhuber, trying to be his dynamic, impressive self, and Ogden just goes in there with his lunch pail in his hand and takes him down and grinds on him for 3 rounds? Absolutely could happen. So yeah, I haven't bet it yet, but man, if Ogden gets up, I don't think the line will get much wider than it is, but yeah, if Ogden were to get up at like plus 300 or something, I would definitely take that shot, but we'll see. I don't think anything like that's going to happen, but yikes, I'm a half hour in already and we've only done a few fights. Anyway, I guess I must have missed doing videos. It's been a while, so it's been so long that you can see how badly I need a haircut. Anyway, I'm not going to get one, though. I'm growing my hair out. We'll see how it goes. My wife said, so are you just going to be a guy with long hair and a bald spot? And I was like, yeah, I guess. What other choice do I have? We'll see. All right, next up, we've got Loma Lukebunme versus Denisi Gomes. They say Gomes. I'm guessing it's Gomez, right? Because, like, obviously in Spanish, like Mexican families, when it's Nunes and Gomez and stuff, it ends with a Z. But most of the time with Brazilian, Portuguese names, Brazilian families, it ends with an S, like Amanda Nunes, Nunes. I know they were saying Gomes, but I'm pretty sure this is just Gomez, but it's the Brazilian version ending with the S instead of the Z. Anyway, enough about that. We've got Loma Lukebunme as a big favorite here, minus 270. Comeback on Denisi Gomes is plus 220. Let me see if that's actually accurate on the best fight odds here. Denisi plus 270. Yeah, that's about right, I guess. Yeah, this spot. So obviously, Loma Lukebunme has been there and done that. she's pretty good. We know what we know about her at this point. She's small. She's like 5'1", but Denise Gomes is only 5'2". You know, these are both fighters who probably would be atom weights if the UFC had an atom weight division. Loma Lookboonmee definitely would be. But, you know, Loma Lookboonmee is one of those fighters who literally grew up doing martial arts. You know, who know? I don't know exactly when she started training Muay Thai, but, you know, in Thailand, probably started training Muay Thai at 5-6 years old. One of those fighters who's allegedly had hundreds of Muay Thai matches, you know, smokers and stuff, you know, probably even by the time she was like 18, who knows how many she'd had, you know, so really grew up training, switched over to MMA, made her way into the UFC. You know, she's had some wins, she's had some losses, but she, you know, she's good. And one thing that really stands out about Loma Lookboonmee's game, I think, is how good she is in the clinch. What it made me think of is just like the dynamic between these two fighters. I used to do Muay Thai myself, and I had an instructor who was really big on having us train in the clinch. And he said a lot of Muay Thai schools don't really focus on the clinch that much. He's like, every Muay Thai school, you know, every Muay Thai fighter, you know, if you fight in a tournament, every fighter that you're up against is going to be good at range, at kickboxing range. But he's like, a lot of them don't really train the clinch that much. And my instructor was, you know, really like to train the clinch with, you know, the gate knees, the knees, the elbows, but also foot sweeps, throws, takedowns, that kind of thing. And that's something that Loma Lookboonmee is really good at. I actually think, you know, at open space, at kickboxing range, I mean, Loma Lookboonmee is fine there, but that's not really where she impresses, in my opinion. She impresses in the clinch. I wouldn't be surprised if Denise Gomes is actually able to get the upper hand when they're striking at distance. You know, I don't know. We'll see what the dynamic looks like, but Denise Gomes' striking at distance looks good. But I don't think she's going to be as good as Loma Lookboonmee in the clinch situations. You know, Loma's been fighting for a long time, her whole life, if you count kickboxing, Muay Thai matches. So, like, I think it's reasonable to assume that Loma is going to have the know-how to get this fight where she wants it to be, to get the fight into the realm where she's going to have, you know, the best possible chance to win. And I think that she's going to be looking to use the clinch here. I don't really know much about Denise Gomez's wrestling or ground game, but I think Loma should probably be able to clinch up with her. And, you know, we've seen some decent wrestling from Loma in her recent fights. So do I like Loma as that big of a favorite when there's question marks about Denise Gomes? And I think Gomes might be able to hold her own against Loma in certain phases of the game. No, I don't like a big price tag like that. If you've been following my thing, I'm calling the She's a Dog project. If you go to betmma.tips/she's a dog, and that's DAWG, not DOG. I've been just blindly betting the women's underdog in every UFC fight, because I did the math to see. I did it in July. I did the math for every women's underdog in 2022 up to that point. So from January 1st to like mid-July or so. And it turned out if you had bet $100 on every women's underdog, you would have been up almost $1,000 at that point. And that's without doing any tape, any research, nothing, just automatically betting the underdog in every women's UFC fight. It was a profitable angle. And so I started tracking it on betmma.tips. And this is a spot where, you know, I mean, it does play out a lot of the time. Should Loma be a big favorite here? Yes. But do I hate a shot on Denise Gomes as a big underdog? Not necessarily. I haven't done it yet. I'm probably not going to do it, but you never know. Oh, that's right. Wait, let me check something here. I put in my notes here, because I looked at these odds right before, and I put in my notes here that Loma had dropped to like minus 205. Let me look here. Okay. She's still showing it like minus 250, Loma can be had for as low as minus 200 out there now. I don't mind potentially using Loma as a parlay piece or something at that minus 200, but once she was getting up to like minus 270, minus 300 type of range, I didn't like that. But anyway, as for a pick, yeah, we're going to go with Loma. But yeah, if you can get her at like minus 200, I don't hate that as a parlay piece, but not much else to say about that one. Next up, we're moving on to Aspen Ladd versus Sarah McMann in the bantamweight division. It's a pretty close fight. Aspen Ladd shows at minus 130 here. let me just check best fight odds and make sure that that's reasonably accurate. Shows Aspen Ladd minus 128 is the best you can be had for. Best you can get, Sarah McMann plus 128. All right. Anyway, I have to mention this because I was proud of it. Sarah McMann's last fight, she fought Carol Hossa. I bet Sarah McMann by decision at plus 400, which I thought was, when I saw that line, I was like, wow, I think Sarah McMann by decision is a pretty likely outcome here. And plus 400, I only put like a sprinkle. I put like a quarter of a unit on it or something. I wish I would have put a full unit on it. But anyway, she came through there. The biggest concern about Sarah McMann is obviously her age. You know, she's 41. She's almost 42 years old now, 41 years, 11 months. And I would say, I would argue that it didn't really show that much in the Carol Hossa fight. I had concerns about her age there as well. Because, one of the first things to go as far as a fighter, when you age is the speed, the reflexes, the reaction time. And that's why age is a bigger problem for flyweights and bantamweights and featherweights than it is for light heavyweights and heavyweights, because you still, heavyweights can fight well into their 40s because they still carry that power, and the speed and the reaction time isn't necessarily as big of a deal there. Sarah McMann was able to shoot really nice reactive takedowns, really find those opportunistic spots to change levels and blast. She looked good. She looked quick. She looked like her reaction times were there. I mean, that's the kind of thing that could fall off at any time, I guess, but excuse me. So that's what, the big concern about Sarah McMann here. As far as a breakdown of her skill set, I mean, we know who Sarah McMann is. She wrestled in the Olympics a really, really long time ago. She's very physically strong. She's a good wrestler. Her striking has been coming along. Her striking's not terrible, but the physical strength, the physicality, and the wrestling are really Sarah McMann's thing. Aspen Ladd. Sorry, my cat's out there. I think he wants to come in. All right, we'll see. Aspen Ladd. I put in my notes this week. I put like something like, I'm not trying to be a hater, but I just think that I don't understand what Aspen Ladd is good at. And I just don't really think that she's that good. And she's capable of impressive performances sometimes, but she's also capable of just entirely dropping the ball and just being like, what is she doing in there? So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Aspen Ladd in general. So there's a lot of question marks in this fight, in my opinion, because we've got Sarah McMann at almost 42 years old and all the issues that can potentially come with that. And we've got Aspen Ladd who's really inconsistent in her performances and who also struggles to make weight. So it's tough to really have a comfortable read on this fight, at least until we see them on the scales, or, I don't know. If this was a few years ago, I would feel pretty comfortable picking Sarah McMann here, because really the only thing that's keeping me off her for the most part is just that age thing and the possibility of her just kind of falling off that cliff because of her age. Otherwise, like skill for skill, especially after what she did to Carol Hossa, I think Sarah McMann, could win this fight. Let me look at my notes here. What else was I? Oh, another important thing to note. Sarah McMann always does her best work in round 1, and she tends to fade late. Aspen Ladd's kind of the opposite. She tends to do her best work in round 3. She tends to, she's like the Charles Jourdain of women's MMA. She tends to come alive in round 3 and kind of get crazy and look for the finish there. So I don't mind a sprinkle on Ladd in round 3. I did look these up. Ladd in round 3 to finish in round 3 can be had at plus 1,000 on Bet Online. And if you want to be more specific, Ladd by KO in round 3 plus 1,500. Ladd by sub in round 3 plus 2,500. Personally, I would just go with the finish instead of trying to pick you try to pick a method, you get too fancy and you're like almost right and you don't get any money and then it's no fun. But yeah, I don't really know what to do with this one right now. I may take a shot on Sarah McMann if she gets to be an even bigger dog. But even if I do take a shot on Sarah McMann, I will probably put a little sprinkle on Aspen Ladd to finish in round 3 as well. And I might even sprinkle that Ladd round 3 anyway, just because I love those I love those big money props like that. Who doesn't, right? All right. 39 minutes in. Next up, we've got Giles versus Louis Cosce. I'm going to try to do this one a little quicker. Trevin Giles, pretty big favorite at minus 205. Come back on Louis Cosce plus 170. I was not planning on breaking these fights down so long, but I'm going to try to go a little quicker on this one. They say that it's important to state your biases as a gambler, content creator. I'm going to let you know I don't like Trevin Giles, and I don't know why. If you've been following me for a while, you know I always talk about how I don't really have favorite fighters. I don't really have fighters I hate. I don't really have I don't really have emotional connections to fighters that much. As far as like typically, I don't care who wins a fight or loses a fight unless I have a bet on it. There aren't like certain fighters that I'm like, oh, I'm bummed out if he loses, or I really want him to win. I don't care for the most part. But for some reason, Trevin Giles just rubs me the wrong way. I don't like him. He bugs me. So doesn't mean I want him to lose, but doesn't bother me when he does, I guess, you know. Anyway, as far as breaking down his skills, I do think Trevin Giles has solid skills in all areas. You know, he really does. But something about he seems to struggle to put it all together. He's kind of inconsistent. I don't know if he has like mental lapses in the cage, or if he just struggles with you know, sometimes fighters are like, they're a good striker, they're a good wrestler, they're a good grappler, but they struggle with putting it all together. It's what, if you've read George St. Pierre's book, he called it shoot box. That's the term that he used. Like the shoot box was the ability, like the sutures that hold it all together, you know, and he thought that was what made him stand out as a fighter. He thought that was what made him great or better than a lot of the fighters that he fought, was that he personally really focused on that. And I can't remember which coach it was, but one of his coaches in the book talked about how he was like, that isn't even something that we really teach him in the training. This is something he does himself. He has figured out how to marry the pieces together into a fantastic, well-rounded game that, you know, transitions smoothly between the different phases of you know, different ranges, different phases of the game. I feel like Trevin Giles might struggle with that. Anyway, enough about that. Louis Cosce, he's kind of I don't want to oversimplify him, but it's a fighter we've seen a million times. You know, he's a strong, physical, hard-nosed wrestle boxer who's looking to get you out of there early. In his UFC, okay, so he had finished 8 opponents in a row in round 1, including his opponent on Contender Series, before making his UFC debut against Sasha Platnikov. So again, he had finished, I think one of those was a amateur fight, but anyway, he had finished 8 opponents in a row in round 1. So you have to think that's literally all he had ever known, is when hey, I'm Louis Cosce. That's what happens when I get in the ring. I get in the ring, I finish my opponent in round 1. So he literally didn't know anything else. So he probably went in there thinking, hey, that's what's going to happen again. And he did. You know, he went for it hard in round 1. And while I would say he has gas tank issues to some degree, he wasn't somebody who like death gassed and fell off. His efficacy and his power certainly waned in round 2, but he still fought well. You know, it wasn't like he totally fell apart and was worthless. He didn't have as much power on his punches anymore. He didn't have as much explosion and speed on his takedowns. You know, like it had taken a lot out of him, but he still fought through it, basically. You know, and you know, now that Cosce's at the UFC level, you know, it's like, will he be working on that issue? Will he be working to improve his cardio, working to, you know, try not to go so hard in round 1 and have that adrenaline dump? Probably. But also, you know, we've seen fighters that sometimes it's like the blueprint is there and you are who you are. You know, we've seen fighters struggle with particular issues their entire career, even, you know, going to different camps and working, and it just doesn't get better, you know? So I think it's reasonable to expect that Louis Cosce is going to Louis Cosce here, right? He's going to come out here and look for that finish in round 1. And if he doesn't find it, he's not going to go away necessarily, but he's going to be a lot less dangerous. I think Trevin Giles is the all-around better fighter. It makes sense to me that Trevin Giles is favored here. He's faced the better competition. I think he's the more well-rounded and effective fighter overall. But I also think that Cosce is going to, you know, be dangerous in round 1 like he always is. And that's why this is one of those that's kind of a perfect live betting spot, because Cosce is probably going to have a good round 1. You know, he's called the monster. He's probably going to come out looking like a monster in round 1. But if he doesn't find the finish in round 1, he's going to be a lot less dangerous and effective moving into round 2. And Giles is probably going to start to take over, because Giles is the kind of fighter, he can be pretty slick and pretty smooth and pretty quick. And, you know, if Cosce is compromised as far as his speed and reaction time slowed down because of, all the energy he uses up in round one. Giles is probably going to, even if he can't finish him, he's going to be able to probably eat him up on the feet with just better movement, better boxing, better output. So yeah, I guess that's about all I have to say on that. I don't mind a sprinkle on Cosce by KO in round one. That sits at plus 700 on Bet Online, because if he's going to win, that's probably how it's going to happen. So like, if you want to have fun with this fight, you could sprinkle that Cosce by KO in round one, just in case that happens, but then hang out with your finger on the live bet trigger and just wait for Cosce to fade in round two if it doesn't happen, and bet on Trevin Giles live. Anyway, I ended up talking about that one longer than I was gonna. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to do this one quick. We'll see. Damon Jackson versus Pat Sabatini. Because I don't have a massive breakdown for you on this fight. It's showing Pat Sabatini minus 220, Damon Jackson plus 175. That feels like that might have changed a little bit. Sorry, I keep pulling this up. I didn't have my screens all set up. I keep pulling this stuff up on a different screen that y'all can't see. But best fight odds shows the best you can get Sabatini is minus 178. He's closer to like minus 190, minus 200 range most spots. Damon Jackson, best you can get him is plus 164. He's down to like plus 150, plus 155. So yeah, I think when I first did the tape here, Damon Jackson was, well, plus 175, I think, like we're seeing on the screen there. Anyway, I bet Damon Jackson. I put 10 units on Damon Jackson in his last fight against Dan Argueta, which is not something I normally do. I did put 10 units on Chimaev. That was only like I said, that I've done 5 big bets over 7. I think that was only the second time I've ever bet 10 units. But anyway, after I did the tape on Damon Jackson and Dan Argueta, I pulled up the odds and I saw Damon Jackson at minus 280. And I was just like, boom. And I dropped a 10 unit bomb because I was expecting to pull up the odds and see Damon Jackson at like minus 400, minus 500. So I got him at minus 280. He closed at like minus 700, minus 800, something like that. So talk about some closing line value, right? Anyway, enough about that. So I won a 10 unit bet there. So that was exciting. Like I said, a little bit less of a breakdown for you here. These guys are both solid grapplers, and that's where they butter their bread. However, Damon Jackson, I think you can argue that Damon Jackson is not necessarily a great athlete. He's a good technician. He's very skillful, but I don't think he's particularly athletic naturally. Pat Sabatini is an excellent technician, and he also is quick and athletic. And so to me, this is one of those fights where that's potentially the biggest difference. They're both good wrestlers. They're both good grapplers. But I just think Sabatini is going to be the quicker and more athletic guy, And so when you've got two guys who are good in scrambles and that kind of thing, the guy who's potentially just going to be a little bit quicker and a little bit more agile than the other guy is probably going to get the best of those spots, right? So even though, skill is king, athleticism can make the difference when both guys kind of have similar skills, So yeah, that's pretty much going to be my breakdown for you there. I think they're both very skilled grapplers, and I think Sabatini is just going to be the more athletic guy, and that's going to make a big difference. I do think that they're both, I think it's going to be evenly matched enough. They're both savvy enough with their defense that I don't think that either of them is going to get finished, most likely. So I guess I lean toward Pat Sabatini by decision. But yeah, I'm probably not going to bet anything here. Hey, I actually kept that one kind of short. Next up, we've got Anthony Hernandez versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I got to pull up my notes here. Anthony Hernandez is a small favorite, minus 170. Barriault plus 145. I guess I pretty much agree with I could see it maybe even being a little bit closer, but I agree that Hernandez should be favored a little bit. He's just kind of the more dynamic and more dangerous guy. Both of these guys like to come forward and be aggressive, but in very different ways. Marc-Andre Barriault he's a boring kind of aggressive, if that makes sense. He's aggressive, but he's very measured. He's kind of plodding about it. He likes to come forward, but he's very measured. He's not chaotic about how he does it. Hernandez doesn't mind being absolutely chaotic about how he applies pressure, so they both apply pressure, but it's a different kind of pressure. In Anthony Hernandez's last fight against Josh Fremd, he found a lot of success with a really aggressive, grappling heavy approach. I mean, he came out and just looked to grapple, looked to wrestle, really went for it right away. And that worked really well against Josh Fremd. He took down Fremd 8 times on 11 attempts, and he racked up almost 11 minutes of control time. So very impressive stats there with the grappling. Like I said, Barriault, he brings a more measured type of pressure, but he's also a guy who I think can be taken out of his game if he's not given space to work and if he's not allowed to be the one pressuring. If you keep him on his heels, make him uncomfortable, don't give him the space and the pressure that he wants to work with, I think it can take him out of his game. And Hernandez is a guy who will embrace that chaos and that frenetic pressure, which I think could be an Achilles heel for Marc-Andre Barriault. So I think that it makes sense to me in that regard why Hernandez is favored here. Hernandez he's showed the willingness and the cardio to chain together nonstop takedown attempts, to just keep working for that, and nonstop sub attempts too. He's got a really nice front choke series. Once he gets on that, he'll transition between different front chokes. So yeah, I think the Hernandez that we saw against Fremd, if he comes out in a similar way here, I think he's going to be able to be effective. I think he's going to be able to make Marc-Andre Barriault uncomfortable, keep him on his heels, not really let him get into his game that much. Barriault is tough and scrappy, but I think, he could start to fold under that kind of pressure. If I was going to bet the fight at the current odds, I do think it's a close enough fight that I don't know. I was going to say I might end up looking toward Barriault, but that's probably not true at the current odds. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I do like Hernandez to win here, but I don't really like the price too much. So it seems like a stay away for me. I would maybe look at the over. I think it seems pretty likely. I don't know. It seems likely to me that this fight goes to decision, but I also didn't really look at their finishing rates and stuff to come to that conclusion. So I might be wrong, but anyway, moving right along, just a few fights left. We've got Tanner Boser versus Rodrigo Nascimento in the heavyweight division. I like Tanner Boser. If you guys have been watching me for a while, you know that I love heavyweight MMA. I even love terrible heavyweight MMA. Boser is showing us minus 195 here. I actually think that that's not accurate. I think he's closer to, he can be had for as low as minus 164. Nascimento can be had for plus 154. But anyway, moderate size favorite for Boser here, which I think makes sense. I like Boser. I think he's pretty good. He's not a fantastic athlete. He's not a fantastic fighter, but he's solid. He's pretty good. And I like that he's kind of small for a heavy, he's one of those guys that he would be a perfect candidate for the cruiserweight division if they were to make like a 220, 225 division. He cut to 205 probably, but it might be a bit of a difficult cut for him because he does come in around 240 or so. So like he's kind of undersized for a heavyweight, but he's the kind of heavyweight who's able to make it work for him because he's quicker and more fleet of foot than other heavyweights. And that's kind of his game anyways. He uses a lot of movement. He does hit hard, he's not like a Francis Ngannou or Derek Lewis kind of, like dead you knockout puncher, but he does hit hard. He's got some fire on those punches. Rodrigo Nascimento is a guy that I'm not so sure about, he's a guy that I don't necessarily have a great read on. He's got moments. He clearly has some skills, but I'm having a hard time getting a confident read on him because he seems pretty inconsistent from fight to fight, and even inconsistent sometimes from moment to moment in the same fight. His hands look decent at times. He looks like he's got some pop on his punches, but he also looks pretty sloppy and unathletic at times. He's obviously got a solid ground game, but he kind of lacks the wrestling to get it there consistently, which we say about jiu-jitsu fighters all the time. He's got some good things going for him, but I'm just not sure about his overall game or his overall ceiling. He's not a guy I'm super, super sold on. Early on in Nascimento's fight with Alain Baudot was landing hard, clean punches almost at will. I mean, he was able to land on Nascimento. And so, I think if Alain Baudot could do that, I think Tanner Boser can probably do that too. If Nascimento is able to get Tanner Boser down, is that going to be a problem? Maybe. Nascimento will be the better grappler. Will Boser be able to get back to his feet? Maybe, probably. I actually did put a little bet on Tanner Boser by TKO I think I got it at plus 170. I do think Boser finding a TKO is probably the most likely outcome here, but I might have to take a closer look at the possibility of Nascimento finding a sub or a ground and pound TKO here. I might have to do a little bit more work on this one. I'm not sure, but anyway, by way of a pick, I'll go with Boser, but I think I might need to look into this a little more because there might be some angles to play Nascimento here that makes sense that I just haven't really looked at yet. Alan Amedovski versus Joseph Pyfer. I am not going to say much about this fight. This is a total setup fight. Just 1 second. Absolutely no question it's a setup fight. That doesn't mean that always works out the way the UFC wants it to, but the whole B Joe Pyfer thing. Dana definitely likes Joe Pyfer. Alan Amedovski has been an absolute bust in the UFC. Totally reasonable to assume that they're trying to give Joe Pyfer an opponent that he can style on to build his name a little bit. Alan Amedovski, he does hit hard. It's not that he's not a dangerous guy. He's a dangerous guy in round one, but he's just not really that technical, not really that skilled, but he can hit hard. And if he lands on you, it can be a problem. I did, just because of course I did already put 0.1 unit on Alan Amedovski by KO in round one at plus 2,500 because I had to. 25-1. Yeah, he's a big underdog, plus 325. But his only path to victory here really is to find that round one KO. And I was like, 25-1, 0.1 unit. Why not? Right. So I put it out there. But yeah, if Amedovski doesn't find that round one KO, which obviously if we look at the 25-1 odds, we see that that's not very likely to happen. I think the most likely outcome here is Pyfer finishes Amedovski late in round one or maybe into round two. But yeah, Pyfer should roll here. It's a setup fight for him. But this tells you all you need to know. The under 1.5 is at minus 190. So obviously the bookmakers are aware that, and the betting public is aware that this fight is likely going to end, in the first 7.5 minutes, and likely it's going to be Joe Pyfer doing the ending. I feel like I've already said more than I need to on this fight. That is enough about that. Next up, we've got Andre Fili versus Bill Algeo. Pretty much a coin flip. We're showing Fili at minus 130, Bill Algeo at plus 110. I'm pretty sure it's still pretty close to that. I think I might have seen them both at minus 110 at one point, but it's close to a coin flip. I'm just going to be honest with you here. I did not do the tape on this fight, and I'm probably not going to because I'm already going to jump into starting to tape the next event so I don't fall behind. But I looked at this fight. I looked at this matchup, and I was like, you know what? Just knowing what I know about these two, sometimes you watch tape on a fight and you just don't get a good feel for it. You don't get a good feel for the dynamic. And without even doing the tape, I was pretty sure this was going to be one of those fights where I was like, I don't think I'm going to get anything out of doing the tape here anyway. Plus I was running out of time. So I just didn't. I do think Andre Fili is the better fighter here, but I think an argument can be made that we've maybe started to see Fili falling off a little bit. I don't know. And maybe Bill Algeo is getting better. Maybe this is Bill Algeo's moment to kind of step up. I don't know. I'm not saying that officially, but these guys are both tough and scrappy. I do think the fight probably goes to decision, and I do think the fight should be a lot of fun. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say about it. Only 2 fights left, gang. Chidi Njokuani versus Gregory Robocop Rodriguez. This should be a lot of fun. See, there's another situation where, Rodriguez ending with an S because it's the Portuguese version rather than Z for the Spanish version. That's why I think Denise Gomes' name is actually Denise Gomes. But anyway, couple of middleweights here, a couple of big middleweights. Both guys standing 6'3". This fight is a coin flip right now, pretty much. And I got to say, I was surprised. After I did the tape, okay, so this is a fight. Gregory Rodriguez is a guy that, kind of like I was saying about the Cameron VanCamp Nicholas Motta fight earlier. If I knew Gregory Rodriguez was going to wrestle here, if I knew he was going to come out and push a grappling heavy game plan, I'd be willing to call him minus 200 or better. I think he would roll if he came out and just decided to grapple here. But he's shown that even when he's in a situation where he knows that that's his big advantage, he doesn't always look to use it, which is frustrating. But Chidi Njokuani, he's a guy who toiled in smaller shows for a long time. He's a guy, if you follow the sport for a long time, you know who Chidi is, his brother Anthony. You know, Anthony was in the UFC quite a few years ago. Chidi finally, you know, he'd fought in Bellator, I think, and a few other places. Finally made his way to the UFC, and he's won 2 UFC fights impressively, and both of them in round 1, if I remember correctly. However, I'm not convinced that Chidi is as good as those fights have made him look, unless he really has turned a corner and improved a ton. I think, you know, I don't want to call anything fluky, but I feel like Chidi's going to get exposed as not being as good as those performances have shown him to be. Just one second. I apologize. I'm going to go let my cat in. I'll be right back. Okay, my cat went in one door and my dog came in this door. So got rid of the cat. Now the dog's here. Anyway, so yeah, if Gregory Rodriguez, if he decides to toy with Chidi on the feet, yeah, it could be a problem. You know, Robocop is a good striker. I think Chidi's a better striker. However, so yeah, like on the feet, I would give Chidi the advantage. However, I think the advantage on the ground, the difference on the ground between these two, the chasm between their skills there is far larger than the chasm between their skills on the feet. I think Rodriguez is a much better grappler. Last I knew, I'm not positive, but I think Chidi is a brown belt in BJJ and Rodriguez is, you know, a champion level black belt. He has a lot of power too. So yeah, when I finished taping this fight, I was like, man, if I knew Rodriguez was going to grapple, I'd be willing to put him at minus 200, minus 250 even maybe. But I think that I ended up lining him around like minus 160, minus 165. And then when I pulled it up and saw that it was a coin flip pretty much, I put a little on him right away because I was like, wow, I got him at minus 115. And I think actually earlier today I can't remember which book I looked at, but he was like plus 107. Let me see here on best fight odds. So yeah, there's plus money. Yeah, he can be had for plus 108. Plus 104, plus 105. So yeah, there's plus money available on. I wish I hadn't already taken him at minus 115, but not a huge difference. But yeah, like I do feel like that line is wrong. I mean, yeah, it could partially come, you know, it probably comes down to, like I said, that we can't necessarily trust his fight IQ. Is he going to come out and just bang with Chidi? And is he going to bang with Chidi and get banged out of there in round 1? Yeah, that could happen. But if he fights smart, I think Rodriguez takes this fight. I don't want to say easily. I'm not trying to take anything away from Chidi, but I think this is Robocop's fight to lose if he comes out and fights smart. So I did bet him straight up, and I also sprinkled him by sub at plus 500. That brings us to the final fight, gang. Corey Sandhagen versus Song Yadong, whichever one you want to call it. Sandhagen minus 210, Song Yadong plus 175. I actually think that's not accurate anymore either. So yeah, we're seeing Sandhagen can be had for as low as minus 180 now. Song Yadong out there plus 170. Okay, so I guess it hasn't changed a ton. But anyway, I'm not going to get real deep into the breakdown on this one. You know, Corey Sandhagen is the bigger guy. To me, the breakdown of this fight, it kind of comes down to this. Like, you know, these guys are both strikers. It's reasonable to assume that this fight is going to play out mostly in the striking. I did have some stats here. Okay, so these guys have a combined total of 8 takedowns landed between them in 20 total UFC fights. So just to give you an idea of, like, you know, they're not out there actively looking for takedowns most of the time, you know. Not to say that somebody might not shoot and that a little bit of this fight might not play out on the ground, but this is a 25-minute fight between 2 strikers for the most part. And to me, the breakdown just comes down to, you know, Sandhagen is the bigger guy. He's also he's the guy with the more varied toolbox, and he's the tougher puzzle to solve, I think. You know, he's a guy who uses his movement really well. He's really tricky to figure out. He's always kind of moving and coming from different angles. And, you know, Song Yadong he's a very technically skilled striker, but he doesn't have as much of a finesse game like that. His game isn't necessarily as much of a puzzle that you're trying to solve. It's more like, what Song Yadong is going to try to do. He's going to try to land a big shot on you and drop you where you stand. And if he lands that shot, he probably will, whereas Sandhagen is mixing things up a little bit more, I guess. Sandhagen has never been knocked out in 18 pro appearances, but Song Yadong does have 25 minutes here to make it happen, So like I see, like, I think, if the fight goes to decision, I think it's Corey Sandhagen all day. I think he's going to, like I said, he's just going to use his movement, his more varied striking attack. He's going to be putting out more volume. He's probably going to be landing more. Like, I think the minute winner here is Corey Sandhagen, almost certainly, unless it becomes one of those fights where, if Corey Sandhagen is winning the minutes and Song Yadong is able to land one or two huge shots or get a knockdown or something, that's the way he's going to be able to potentially steal rounds from the minute winner. But if he's not able to find those moments, I think he's going to be falling behind on the scorecards pretty consistently as the fight goes on. If you like Song Yadong, I think you got to bet his KO prop because, like I said, I don't think he's going to win a decision here. I lean toward thinking the fight probably goes all 25 minutes. I don't know. I shouldn't even say that. I don't really have a super strong feeling on that. But yeah, I think it probably does. I think as far as the pick, I'm gonna go Corey Sandhagen by decision. I'm not hanging my hat on that, but I do like Sandhagen here. In fact, I bet him at minus 205 when I finished the tape because I was actually thinking he might get to be an even wider favorite, but it's actually closed in a little bit. It's gone the other way a little bit, but I don't mind. I just told you the numbers and I forgot. Sandhagen can be had for like minus 180. Yeah, I don't mind a bet on that at all. And I think, I feel like, I don't want to oversimplify. I feel like you can bet Sandhagen's money line and you can just hedge that with a little bit on Song Yadong by KO because I really think that if he's going to win, that's the way he's going to do it. So anyway, I don't mind Sandhagen as a parlay piece here or even a straight up bet potentially, but maybe not a bad idea to hedge with that Song Yadong KO because the man clearly is dangerous. All right, my throat's starting to give out. That's the first breakdown video I've done in a long time. We went an hour and 7 minutes. Not bad. Awesome. Okay, what else usually I try to end this by taking a look at the bets I've got. So the bets that I've placed so far, I'm going to make that a little bigger. Can you see that okay? Oh, that's better. Bets I've got so far, I put 2.05 units to win one on Corey Sandhagen at minus 205. I put 1.15 at minus 115 to win 1 unit on Robocop Rodriguez. Put 0.7 on Cameron VanCamp at plus 180. The reason that I put a weird number like 0.7 there is I was like, okay, I'm willing to put a unit total on Cameron VanCamp. But last I looked, there were no props out for that fight yet. But I decided, you know what? I want to put 7.7 on his money line. And I'm going to put 0.3 on either a sub prop or inside the distance. Because I do think that fight probably finishes. So anyway, pretty chalky here. This is Amedovski versus Pyfer under 1.5 minus 175. It's at like minus 190, minus 200 now. I did put a unit on that. Hernandez Barriault over 2.5 was almost a coin flip. I do feel like, I don't know, maybe that was a bad call. I don't know. We'll see. I put 1.15 to win 1 unit at minus 115. Like I said, I did, for the culture, as the kids say, I did put 0.1 on Amedovski by TKO in round 1, 25-1. 0.6 on Boser by KO at plus 170. 0.2 on Robocop by submission at plus 500. And then I put a little parlay here. I put Hernandez in with Robertson Agapova under 2.5 at minus 150. This one's a little bit risky. That's why I went kind of small on it. This was definitely one of those, like, as I was placing this bet, I was like, I don't know if this is the smartest bet in the world, but as I said, I kind of, I'm here to have fun. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I was like, is this a smart parlay? Probably not. Is it a fun parlay? Yes. So I pulled the trigger. So there you go. That is what I've got on the slate so far for UFC Vegas 60. I'm so rusty, I don't even know how to close these videos anymore. Thank you so much for watching, y'all. I really appreciate those of you who've stuck around and watched all the way to the end. I am Erik with Erik Bets Fights. You can find me on Twitter at Erik Bets Fights. It shows it right down there. Please subscribe to me here on YouTube. Please like this video. Leave a comment. If you want to leave it, the comments help the algorithm get going here, but I'll give you a question. What is your favorite prop bet for UFC Vegas 60? What's your favorite prop bet? Let me know that down in the comments there. Also, if you're seeing this on the Never Hedge Media YouTube channel, make sure to like and subscribe there. Like and subscribe all over the place. Erik Bets Fights and Never Hedge Media. Thank you so much for watching. I am Erik with Erik Bets Fights, reminding you to play it smart, play it tight, and let's grow those bankrolls. Enjoy the fights this weekend at UFC Vegas 60, y'all, and I'll see you next time. Take care.